Let me take you back to the rolling hills of the English countryside, where life in the small village of Longbourn was about to take a dramatic turn. This is the world of the Bennet family, and our story begins with a piece of news that set the entire household abuzz. It all started with the arrival of Mr. Charles Bingley, a wealthy bachelor who had taken up residence in the grand estate of Netherfield Park. Now, if you had any acquaintance with Mrs. Bennet, you would know that the arrival of such a man was nothing short of monumental. She was a mother of 5 daughters: Jane, Elizabeth, Mary, Kitty, and Lydia, and her life's mission, or so it seemed, was to see them all married off to men of good fortune. It was no wonder, then, that when she heard of Mr. Bingley's arrival, she practically flew into a frenzy. A single man of large fortune. 4 or 5 thousand a year. What a fine thing for our girls, she exclaimed to her long-suffering husband, Mr. Bennet, who, though not prone to excitement, could not help but tease her. With a sarcastic lift of his brow, he replied, "You want to tell me he has come to marry one of them?" Mrs. Bennet ignored her husband's tone, already deep into her fantasies of matching one of her daughters to this most eligible gentleman. For her, the prospect of 5 unmarried daughters was a dire one, and a man like Mr. Bingley, with his fortune, could provide not only a husband but also security. A few days later, the much-anticipated ball at Meryton arrived, and with it, the first opportunity for the Bennet family to meet Mr. Bingley. The ball was held in a large assembly room, glittering with candles and filled with music and laughter. Mrs. Bennet had fussed over her daughters, ensuring they looked their best, but it was the eldest, Jane, who truly shone that evening. With her serene beauty and kind heart, Jane was the sort of young woman who captured attention without even trying. The moment Mr. Bingley set eyes on Jane, it was as if the world stopped. He couldn't take his eyes off her. He quickly asked her for a dance, and then another, an uncommon gesture in society, signaling a very clear interest. Mrs. Bennet, from across the room, all but glowed with satisfaction. But as the evening went on, another figure in Mr. Bingley's party began to attract attention for all the wrong reasons. Mr. Fitzwilliam Darcy, tall, handsome, and elegant, was the talk of the room, but not because he was charming like his friend. Quite the opposite, in fact. He stood apart from the crowd, looking over the villagers with a gaze that many found cold and disdainful. Elizabeth Bennet, Jane's younger sister, noticed Mr. Darcy almost immediately. She was not the type to be cowed by wealth or intimidated by those who thought themselves superior. With her sharp eyes and even sharper wit, she could sense his pride from across the room. At one point, Mr. Bingley, who was clearly eager to involve his friend, suggested that Darcy ask Elizabeth to dance. Darcy, without so much as a second glance at her, responded in a voice loud enough for Elizabeth to overhear, "She is tolerable, but not handsome enough to tempt me." Now, Elizabeth was not the kind of woman to be easily insulted. In fact, she had a good sense of humor, and while she could have been wounded by Darcy's words, she chose instead to laugh it off. With a playful twinkle in her eye, she later shared the story with her friends, saying, "I could easily forgive his pride if he had not mortified mine." From that moment on, Elizabeth's opinion of Mr. Darcy was firmly set. He was arrogant, self-important, and completely insufferable. Meanwhile, Mr. Bingley's attentions toward Jane continued, much to the delight of Mrs. Bennet, who was already envisioning Jane as mistress of Netherfield. Bingley was the picture of warmth and friendliness, and his admiration for Jane was clear to everyone around them. But while Jane and Bingley grew closer, Darcy remained a figure of aloofness and mystery, often casting silent glances at Elizabeth, though she was too busy disliking him to notice. As the days went by, the village of Meryton was graced with another visitor, one who, unlike Mr. Darcy, was immediately well received. This newcomer was Mr. George Wickham, a young officer stationed with the militia. With his good looks, easy charm, and engaging manners, Wickham quickly became a favorite among the local ladies. Elizabeth, in particular, found him delightful, and their conversations were filled with ease and laughter. One afternoon, during a walk, Wickham confided in Elizabeth a story that would deepen her already intense dislike of Mr. Darcy. Wickham claimed that he had once been close to Darcy's family and that Darcy's father had intended to provide him with a living, a position in the clergy, upon his death. However, after the elder Mr. Darcy passed away, the younger Darcy had cruelly denied him the position out of jealousy and spite. Elizabeth, already predisposed to think ill of Darcy, believed Wickham's every word. She found it easy to accept that Darcy was as heartless as he appeared. Around the same time, Mr. Collins, a distant cousin and the heir to the Bennet family estate, arrived at Longbourn. Mr. Collins was a clergyman under the patronage of Lady Catherine de Bourgh, a wealthy and overbearing noblewoman. Now, Mr. Collins was pompous and ridiculous, a man who spoke in long-winded speeches and was utterly convinced of his own importance. His reason for visiting was to find a wife, and he quickly set his sights on Elizabeth. His proposal was one of the most absurd declarations of love one could imagine. He did not speak of affection or admiration. Instead, he listed practical reasons why Elizabeth should accept him. My reasons for marrying, he began pompously, are, first, that I think it a right thing for every clergyman to set the example of matrimony in his parish, and secondly, that I am convinced it will add very greatly to my happiness. Elizabeth, far from being flattered, could hardly contain her revulsion. She politely but firmly refused him, much to her mother's horror. Mrs. Bennet could not understand how Elizabeth could throw away such an opportunity, but Elizabeth was adamant. You could not make me happy, and I am convinced that I am the last woman in the world who would make you so. Mr. Collins was both shocked and humiliated by her refusal, but not one to be easily discouraged. He quickly shifted his attentions to Elizabeth's friend, Charlotte Lucas. Charlotte, being more practical and less concerned with romance, accepted his proposal. Elizabeth, though surprised by Charlotte's decision, understood that her friend valued security over love, and Charlotte, in turn, accepted her new life with Mr. Collins with a quiet resignation. Not long after, Elizabeth went to visit Charlotte at her new home, which was near Rosings Park, the grand estate of Lady Catherine de Bourgh. It was here that Elizabeth encountered Mr. Darcy again, and much to her surprise, he began to seek her out with increasing regularity. They found themselves thrown together during social visits, dinners, and long walks, and though Elizabeth still found Darcy proud, she could not help but notice that his attentions toward her were different. Then came the moment that would change everything. One evening, when they were alone, Darcy suddenly declared his love for her. But his proposal was far from what one might expect. Instead of a tender declaration of affection, Darcy spoke in a manner that was more a struggle than a romance. In vain have I struggled, he began. It will not do. My feelings will not be repressed. You must allow me to tell you how ardently I admire and love you. But even as he professed his love, Darcy could not help but insult her family and her social standing, speaking of how it pained him to lower himself by proposing to someone so beneath him. Elizabeth, furious at his arrogance, rejected him outright. In a blistering response, she accused him of ruining her sister Jane's happiness by separating her from Mr. Bingley and of wronging Mr. Wickham. You are the last man in the world whom I could ever be prevailed on to marry, she told him, her voice shaking with emotion. Darcy, visibly wounded, left without another word, but the next morning, he handed Elizabeth a letter that would change everything. In the letter, Darcy explained his actions. He admitted to separating Jane and Bingley, but only because he believed Jane did not love Bingley in return, and he feared for his friend's heart. As for Wickham, Darcy revealed the shocking truth. Wickham was not the honourable man he claimed to be. In fact, Wickham had attempted to elope with Darcy's younger sister, Georgiana, to gain access to her fortune. Darcy's letter forced Elizabeth to reconsider everything she thought she knew. For the first time, she realized that perhaps she had been too quick to judge Darcy and too ready to believe Wickham's lies. But just as Elizabeth began to rethink her feelings, disaster struck. Her youngest sister, Lydia, eloped with none other than Wickham, sending the Bennet family into a frenzy. Lydia's reckless actions threatened to ruin the entire family's reputation, and Elizabeth was overwhelmed with worry. Unbeknownst to her, Darcy took it upon himself to resolve the situation. He tracked down Lydia and Wickham, paid off Wickham's debts, and arranged for the two to marry, thus saving the Bennet family from disgrace. Darcy did all of this quietly, without seeking any credit or recognition. When Elizabeth learned of Darcy's actions, her feelings for him shifted from gratitude to something deeper. She saw in him a man of integrity, humility, and kindness, qualities she had overlooked in her earlier judgment. In the end, Mr. Bingley returned to Netherfield and, encouraged by Darcy, proposed to Jane, who happily accepted. Darcy, now fully aware of his own faults, proposed again to Elizabeth, this time with true humility. Elizabeth, having overcome her own prejudice, accepted him with joy. The two couples, Elizabeth and Darcy, Jane and Bingley, found happiness together, having learned that love requires not only passion but also growth, understanding, and the willingness to see beyond first impressions.